and there is a hemolytic process going on, always there will be some amount of hyperbilirubinemia. Now this elevation in the bilirubin will be visible in the sclera or in the it will be visible only if the bilirubin level crosses 3 milligrams per deciliter. So unless it crosses that, it will not be visible, but patients may complain of high colored urine. And so when you are taking history of present illness, you must ask for all evidences of congestive cardiac failure, all evidences of hemolysis. And as a result of the hemolysis, many of these children will develop pigment stones in the gallbladder. So they may present with abdominal pain and vomiting caused by cholecystitis due to the calculus. These are pigment stones. Another complication that many of the children with any type of hemolytic anemia develop is leg ulcers. So you have to ask, because of venous stasis, there is viscosity of the blood, and as a result you will have venous stasis, and with that you will have leg ulcers. So in your history of presenting complaint, please make sure that you ask all these things. Okay. The fourth feature that they usually present with is anemia. So questions related to anemia is, first we should decide, okay, is it due to blood loss? If it is due to blood loss, usually GI bleeds are the problem. GI bleeds are the problem. So we should ask for any history of hematemesis or hematochezia. That means passing of blood in the stool, or the stool is black in color. So these are the things that we should ask for. Anemia in India, the commonest cause, as I have told you many times, is due to hookworm infestation. So you have to ask for history of passing worms. Okay. So let's go. The past history, as I told you, we must get a past history of transfusion, whether the child has received any type of blood product in the past. Sometimes they may, if it is a thalassemia trait, they will receive maybe 1 or 2 transfusions. So don't get misled. You may think that thalassemia major, usually children will require transfusions almost every 2 months. So if it is a homozygous manifestation, then it will be even more, you will need it more frequently. If it is heterozygous beta thalassemia, then you will need it less frequency. So it is important for us to know whether they require transfusion, and if it is if this is a patient who is actually diagnosed already, we should keep track of the number of transfusions, because the transfusions, once they cross 100, you can be sure that this patient will be developing hemosiderosis, and as a result iron overload, and we need to put the patient on chelators. Okay. And of course you have to ask for any history of what chelators they're on. That is important for us to know. Now when you take birth history, always divide the birth history into 3 parts. The first trimester, what are the questions you should ask in the first trimester? This is very important. The first, how pregnancy was confirmed, because to know the date of you need to know, sometimes the periods are irregular, sometimes there is delay in the patient goes into postterm. So dating is best done in the first trimester. Scans will reveal the dates the best. So you should confirm your pregnancy, by doing either a urine pregnancy test and measuring the HCG levels, or you should do a scan, an ultrasound abdomen, and confirm fetal heart activity. It's not enough to just confirm that there is gestational sac. To say that there is a viable gestation, you should check for fetal heart activity, which is usually visible by 6 weeks. The second important thing after confirming pregnancy in the first, when you're taking a history in the first trimester, is to ask for any history of fever with rash. Fever with rash, you should ask in all the trimesters. And because at any time the child can develop, the mother can develop a torch infection, and that can be transmitted to the child, and it should to the fetus, and this should be treated. So that is why every trimester you must ask for history of fever with rash. You should also ask if folic acid was taken. Folic acid, this is an exam question. Folic acid should be given 1.5 months prior to conception. When a couple is planning pregnancy, then he should immediately, this thing is not admitting. Okay. So immediately they should start taking folic acid. Folic acid 4 mg is given daily, and that is the only drug that should be given in the first trimester. No iron, no calcium, no paracetamol, no other drug, because organogenesis is in the initial phase, and they may have teratogenic effects, so we don't give any other drug. And folic acid, if suppose the mother already has a child with a neural tube defect, then definitely you should give a higher dose, slightly higher dose, 5 mg per day. Okay, that is the important thing. And this folic acid should be given in the first trimester once daily. And in the second trimester, the important thing that we have to ask is, we have to ask about pregnancy-induced hypertension and gestational diabetes, and 2 doses of TT should be given in the second trimester. Okay. And in the second trimester, you're also going to check regular weight gain. What are the scans done in the first trimester? Pregnancy confirming scan and a nuchal scan, which is done in the 11th week of gestation. Nuchal scan is to diagnose any fetal anomalies, any chromosomal anomalies. There will be a thickening of the nuchal area, more than 3 millimeters or more, that is significant. Okay, so nuchal scan. In the second trimester, you do a TIFA scan, that is to look for fetal anomalies, because organogenesis is complete. So that is the time to do the TIFA scan, between 18 and 20 weeks. Okay. Then in the third trimester, you are going to look for fetal well-being. Okay, fetal well-being, you go and read up today. I don't have time to explain it to you, but fetal well-being can be assessed by ultrasound, fetal movements, the pockets of amniotic fluid. There are 4 criteria. Please go and read up today about that. You should also look for weight gain, because you want to be sure that this child is gaining weight, the fetus is gaining weight adequately. Now in the natal history, it's important to, 2 things are important: to find out if the baby cried immediately, and to find out if the baby also, when lactation was established. It's very important. Lactation, unless the baby is put to breast within half an hour of delivery, and then breastfeeding should be continued for 6 months, exclusive breastfeeding. Remember that. That has to be mentioned in your birth history. If there were any seizures, any feeding abnormalities, if there was any history of jaundice, all these things should be noted. Okay. So, nutritional history. In pediatric cases, the most important thing which is different from medical cases is nutritional history, immunization history, and development history. No pediatric history is complete unless you give the information regarding these three things. So, learn all the caloric values of common foods like idli, eggs, milk, rice, chapati, whatever it is, it is all given in your OP guide. So memorize it. There is no alternative. You have to memorize it so that when you take the history, you will be able to write down in your case sheet. You have to write down how many calories the child got, how many grams of protein, and you have to total it, add it up. So like how I have done here, this child is receiving 1900 calories. Okay, 1900 calories and 32 grams of protein. Then you use the formulas to calculate if the required calories are, if the food, the diet is giving the required calories and proteins. So today, homework for you today is to memorize all those caloric values and to calculate according to the age. You have the formulas, calculate it. And family history is important in thalassemia. You must ask for any history of neonatal deaths with jaundice. You must ask for any fetal deaths because certain thalassemias, like alpha thalassemia with Bart's hemoglobin, you can have IUDs. So you ask for that. And you also ask for any family member who is receiving repeated transfusions. Now, socioeconomic status, use the Kupusamy scale. I don't have the time to tell you that. It's to ask and grade the class of the socioeconomic class of the patient, and also it's important to find out the where they live, whether there is overcrowding, good ventilation, what access they have for toilet facilities, and what type of water they drink. This is very important. You will be asked this. Okay. Now, at the end of history, give a summary. Say that this is a 12-year-old female child born to a second-degree consanguineous marriage belonging to lower socioeconomic status, how many calories she is getting, how many calories, and second thing is, the third thing is immunization. It's very important to talk about the immunization. So remember to comment on the development and immunization. In OPGAI, you have been given development according to the age. Please read it and understand it and memorize it thoroughly. Okay? This is the summary at the end of history. Then you go to your general examination. General examination is just like how you do in medicine. You have orientation in space, time, and place, and you also talk about the vitals. Very important. When you talk about the pulse, remember to say the pulse is 98 beats per minute, and it is regular in rhythm, normal in volume, no special characteristic. All peripheral pulses are felt, and no brachiofemoral delay. These 5 things are very important when you describe the pulse. The respiratory rate, if it is a CNS case, then you have to talk about the type of breathing. Otherwise, the important thing is blood pressure. It should be measured in the supine and in the supine position and in the sitting up position. Okay. Anthropometry, height. Usually in cases of any chronic illness like renal disease or liver disease or thalassemia or congestive cardiac failure due to a cardiac problem, you will, the height, usually there is stunting. So remember that. And also there will be some amount of protein energy malnutrition because they are unable to absorb the nutrients, and the intake is poor because they are repeatedly sick. So due to this, and there is also increased metabolic rate because of their illness. Because of this, there will be stunting and there will be protein energy malnutrition. Now, this is the important thing you have to remember. Head to toe examination in thalassemia. Hair usually is normal. Frontal bossing is present. Parietal bossing is present. Malar eminences are prominent. There is pallor and the nasal bridge is depressed. The teeth are normal, but there is malocclusion because of extra, there is erythropoiesis occurring in places other than where the normal marrow excuse me, just excuse me, there's some problem with the time. I don't know why it says that there's only 7 minutes left.
That's free meeting of Zoom, ma'am.
Sorry?
That is a free meeting of Zoom.
Yeah, I know, but usually I never get this problem. I don't know why.
It's only for 40 minutes.
Okay, so let me go quickly then. So you look at the skin, there is no, look for pallor, look in the conjunctiva and the tongue, look for any bony deformities. So abdomen, usually abdominal examination for thalassemia, when you go to systemic examination, you start with the abdomen because usually you will have hepatosplenomegaly. So you look whether the abdomen is distended, whether the umbilicus is central and everted, or if corresponding quadrants are moving well, dilated veins, which direction they are draining, you should look at that. You also look for palpation, and there you see in the right hypochondrium, there is a mass which is 4 centimeters, 3 centimeters below the right costal margin, moving with respiration, and has a sharp border or a rounded border depending on whether the child is in failure. And you should check the liver span to see if the liver is pushed on by some respiratory pathology or if it is enlarged. True liver enlargement is there. You also look for mass in the left hypochondrium. You identify it as a spleen because it's moving with respiration. The splenic notch is there and it is not bimanually palpable or ballottable. And then you give your final, can you just call Motashin? Sumela, just call him. This is a 12-year-old female child born to a second-degree consanguineous marriage belonging to upper-lower socioeconomic, and give all your findings, okay? I don't want to go through it because I want you to see the pictures that I have for you. So, what are the investigations that you'll do? Hemoglobin, RBC count and hematocrit will all be decreased. Your peripheral smear usually will show anisopoikilocytosis, microcytic hypochromic anemia, and basophilic stippling, fragmented RBCs, Howell-Jolly bodies, target cells. Important thing is target cells, Howell-Jolly bodies, and basophilic stippling. The way to differentiate this from iron deficiency anemia is both have microcytic hypochromic anemia, but in thalassemia, any hemolytic anemia, your reticulocyte count will be raised. And in anemia, due to iron deficiency, your iron binding capacity will be low, will be high, and your serum iron will be low, and your ferritin will be low. So, whereas in thalassemia, it will all be increased. So here I have a picture. You can see that these are the target cells and Howell-Jolly bodies, and look at this anisopoikilocytosis and schistocytes, broken RBCs due to hemolysis. Okay, so here usually thalassemia, there's a problem in the production in the globin, tetramer globin chain, right? So there are decreased beta chains are decreased production is there, and if dad is a carrier and mom is a carrier, then you can have one child 25% affected and 50% may be carriers and 25% will be normal. It says that the time is going to end. Why is that? I don't know. Anyway, let's say for 2 minutes. Okay, so this is the inheritance pattern that I'm trying to show you here. Unaffected, that means in normal children, you will have 97% hemoglobin, adult hemoglobin, and 2% HbA2, and 1% of fetal hemoglobin. Whereas in beta thalassemia major, everything is reversed. You have fetal hemoglobin elevated to over 95%. Okay, and if it is only a intermediate, that means one beta chain only is not being produced, then you'll have 30 to 90%. You may have fetal hemoglobin. If it is only a trait, then you'll have up to 30%. So you can see here this child with malar prominence, malocclusion, depressed nasal bridge, frontal gaussing, and they usually develop chronic sinusitis and impaired hearing. That is because of the repeated infections that they get. So this is the X-ray that you have even in your viva. This is hair on end appearance in thalassemia. Okay. And okay, now what are the complications? You have iron overload, and because of iron overload, you develop hemosiderosis, liver inflammation and cirrhosis. You can develop a hypercoagulable state, bony deformities, which I already showed you, and cardiomyopathy and endocrinopathies, and all this caused by ineffective erythropoiesis. So the skin becomes dark and you develop cirrhosis in the liver and arrhythmia and heart failure due to iron deposition in the cardiac cells. And you may develop diabetes, infertility, pituitary failure and hypothyroidism. These are the endocrine problems that you may develop. So how do we manage it? You maintain hemoglobin levels between 9 to 10 gram %.